I want to take the next, we have 5 Mondays before team conference, and I'm committing to teaching at 4 of those 5. And we just got back from staff retreat. Not all of our college students or our leadership programs students got to go with us, but it was a beautiful time that once a year our team gets away. And a lot of the time is really just about us hanging together and us checking in on the relationships that are in this room. I always think like a healthy staff produces a healthy church. I always think a healthy pastor produces a healthy staff. And so a lot of it has just to do with us getting together, that like it's not all planned or completely programmed, but in that time together, we do get together and open up God's word, and there are things that are shared that I think really become, the language I always use is like marching orders for the rest of the year. And one of the things that I shared about at staff retreat was this big idea called a vision for here. Right. And at team conference, we're gonna actually make this the theme of what we're talking about. And I wanna just give parts of this teaching and some extra stuff, if I can, over the next 4 weeks, because I think it's important that before we get to team conference, that all of us are actually manifesting and thinking about some of these words that I believe the Lord gave me for our church. And it all kind of culminates with team conference. Team conference is this opportunity that we have like a true family reunion between both of our locations, all of your team, all the people that you're pastoring and leading, that you're making the effort to get them to come. Like, how many know you could put a Thanksgiving meal on, but if your family doesn't show up, there's no point. It's great you have turkey there, but it's actually about the people around the table. That's kind of how team conference works. I promise you there's gonna be, what are good things to eat at Thanksgiving? Turkey and stuff. Look at people start getting real engaged right now. Yeah, stuffing. That's all gonna be there, but we're gonna miss it if we don't have the family around the table. So before we get there, I wanna make sure our hearts are in the right place. And I opened staff retreat with a little illustration. This summer, we took some time with our family, and we were on this lake in Alabama called Lake Martin. And we kind of have been going there the last couple summers because every year I preach at this conference called Motion Conference, which is a part of Church of the Highlands. We love those guys so much. But it's this little lake in Alabama, and last year we went there, we had the best time. Like, there's cliffs to jump off, there's a rope swing. There's literally an island called Goat Island. I don't know how this works, but there's goats on the island. And you can like pull your boat up, there's no like ticket fee, you just go and you can feed the goats. And you ever been to something, you come back and like you become like the promoter? Like that's how I am, at least. Like I get onto something and I'm like the Lake Martin. Like I might retire at Lake Martin and be a tour guide. Like I came home, I was like telling my parents, I'm like, you guys have got to come. This is the best lake in the world. There's cliffs and there's restaurants and there's a goat island, you know? And so this summer we got to actually take my parents with us, and we got there and my mom was with us, and God bless my mom, I love her. But she's high energy and she's focused. And I remember the first day we got on the boat, I don't know if this has ever happened to you. Like we're just starting to drive, and everywhere that we start to drive, my mom's like, "Oh, Rich, is that the restaurant you told us about?" And then she pointed there, she's like, "Oh, Rich, is that the cliffs over there? Oh, Rich, oh, that's gotta be Goat Island. That's Goat Island. And finally, like after day 2, I was like, hey, can you stop, you know? like I promise you, Mom, I'm gonna get you to all the places. I promise you, I'm a good tour guide. Watch this, I've been here before. I'm gonna get you to all the sites, to all of the scenes. Yep. And I think sometimes if we're not careful, what can happen to us on our journey of faith is that we can forget those 2 words. It's a journey, and it's a faith journey. And really the call of a Christian is not first to leadership, it's first to following Jesus. He's a rabbi that we are following his way, his life, his pattern. I think so many times we get so obsessed with there that we miss out on here. Look at what Jesus says, Matthew 16:24. I just want to read a couple scriptures. There's a couple things I want to talk about today. Then Jesus said to his disciples, whoever wants to be my disciple, that's you, that's me. Whoever wants to be my apprentice, whoever wants to be my intern, whoever wants to be my 1-year student, my college student, my staff member, whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross and, what's the word? Follow me. The word is not, I want you to lead for me. The word is not that I want you to have a position for me. The word is that you would deny yourself, take up your cross, and follow me. I love leadership. We teach leadership here. But the call of Christianity is not leadership. The call of Christianity is first to follow. And we're gonna follow on a faith journey. What is the definition of faith? Now being sure of what I hope for, certain of what I cannot see. How many of us, we kind of get onto the journey of faith with Jesus and it's like, wait, is that the thing you prophesied to me about last year? Wait, is that the thing that like I sensed that I journaled about 2 years? This is it, right? This is it. And if you're not careful, before you know it, you can begin to develop these ideas, you can begin to create patterns, and you can begin to take your imagination and create what the future looks like. And it's actually limiting you from finding peace and contentment right here. And so what I want to try to lean into with our team, with our staff, and with you right now, in this season, especially with our church, is that I want us to have a vision for here. For this moment, for the present, for being in the boat. Like, the question is not, are you in a storm? The question is Jesus in your boat? Because if he's in your boat, he's gonna get you to all the things that he's told you about. The future he has planned out for you is so much better. But I want us to have a vision for right here, right now. And I suppose a lot of the message for me, it gets loaded because I just think as I go to places, and I even see it myself, so I'm not like trying to project upon you. But when I just talk to so many young leaders, even in the body of Christ, I just sense like never before that there is such a level of discontentment inside of people, a level of dissatisfaction. There's this false notion that I'll be happy when I get there. When I get there. And I don't know what there is. All of us have a different there. I'm not trying to deny vision. I'm not trying to deny you having ambition or drive. I'm just trying to get back to the basics that actually this is about a calling. Actually, this is about denying myself. And in denying myself, I actually am going to find myself. And so I wrote this little thought down, and this is kind of help us today. When you surrender to the follow, you release your worry of the future. When you actually come to terms with, all right, I'm just called to follow. I'm not supposed to know what tomorrow looks like. I'm not supposed to have it all developed. I'm not supposed to know exactly, is that the cliffs right there? Is this Goat Island? It's actually about being with Jesus and going on the journey. The Apostle Paul, he discovered this, Philippians chapter 4, verse 11. He says it this way, he says, I'm not saying this because I'm in need, for I've learned to be content, whatever the circumstances. Someone say whatever. So like whatever your situation is, it falls into whatever, right? Like whatever your circumstance is, I've learned to be content whatever the circumstances. I know what it is to be in need. And I know what it is to have plenty. And I have learned, someone say learned. I've learned the secret of being content in any and every situation, whether well-fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or in want. I can do all this through him who gives me strength. What's interesting is that he says, I've learned the secret, meaning it was a process, it was discovery. And he ends with this scripture that a lot of us like know, and if you've played sports, you might have used it, like, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. And somehow we add that to every selfish ambition that we have, you know, like, I'm gonna write a book because I can do all things through Christ, or I'm gonna make $1 million because I can do all things through Christ, or we're gonna win the game because I can. And I'm not saying that's always a bad application, but that's not the application nor the context of what Paul's talking about. Paul saying, I can do all things through him who gives me strength. What's the context? The context is this word contentment. That I can find satisfaction, purpose, that I can actually find fulfillment, that I can find security no matter what I'm going against, because the secret is not a principle, the secret is a person. My identity is discovered in Jesus. I'm called to follow before I'm called to lead. And so for all of us, before you ever get there, you have to truly be here. You have to truly be here. And so I suppose what I want to kind of remind us, I started at staff retreat, and what I want to sort of lead us up to team conference, what I want to say to our church, what I want to say to those leading our church, what I want to say to you, is I want us to fight for contentment with here. Great. And I love all the things that are in your heart, and I want to be a person in your life that is a celebrator of you. I want to be a person who helps push you into that which you believe God has called you to do. But I got to be honest with you, when I come into this meeting, when I come to this place, I'm looking for people that are called here. here. I'm focused on 6767 Sunset Drive. I'm focused on 77 Northeast 4. I'm focused on my crew this freaking week. I'm excited about the growth track at 2:30 p.m. I want to see that thing uptick. I cannot wait for I Love My City. I want to serve the world, but I want to first start with the city of Miami. I want to see all the children fed, but you know what? I'm going to first start with Miami. I want to preach everywhere, but you know what? I really, really want to show up and lead that huddle right here first. And I don't want to just do it out of this strain. I want to have a peace and a contentment that I've discovered how to do all things, not through me, all things through Him, because I have a vision for here. For here. And so it's a call to here. It's a call to here. I don't want to make any excuses. I'm unapologetically here. This is where I'm. If you're wondering where Rich is, I'm here, yo. Doesn't mean I can't be doing it. It's just, this is where my focus is. This is where my heart is. This is where my feet are planted. I am right here. And those that are on this journey with me, I'm calling you to attention to be here. To be here. So at Staff Retreat, which I want to take the next few weeks to talk about here a little bit more in depth, is I turned here into an acronym with 4 things that I think are just calls to action and 4 things that we can do. And so the first thing is for the H is the word hospitality. And so today I want to talk to you for a minute around the idea of practicing hospitality. Next week or whenever we have next staff meeting, all this Adrian will organize before we get to team conference, is the E is evangelize everywhere, evangelize always. The R is live a life above reproach. We're going to talk about our character and our integrity and how meaningful that is and how we can say a whole lot, but if we're not living out what we're saying, it is not potent, it is not real. That there's power and security in your purity. My goodness, talk about it. And then the last E before we get to team conference is expect the unexpected. I don't want to get ahead of myself because there's a whole lot of things I want to share, but just today I want to lean into this idea of practicing hospitality. And I hope you're taking notes because a lot of this is what I want you to write it down because I want you to get some revelation around this. This is something that's been really meaningful in my life and things that I've discovered really in the last 2 years that I never really knew were biblical, never really knew were practices of Jesus, never really knew were certain hacks to I think the way of Jesus that brings peace and brings contentment. There's a great verse, Hebrews chapter 13, verse 1. I don't have all my verses today on the screen, I just realized, but we'll start with this one. We don't know the author of Hebrews, but he writes, keep on loving one another as brothers and sisters. Watch this. Do not forget to show hospitality to strangers. For by so doing, some people have shown hospitality to angels without even knowing it. What a cool verse, right? Like, anyone think they've ever entertained an angel? Let's see. I knew Alex Piloto would be one of the first. Yes. Oliver, you think so too? Do you have a story that you can think of or no?
I just assume anyone and everyone can be.
I love you. This is why you're married and others are not, you know? So, I'm kidding. Get you a man who thinks he's entertained angels. I married one, Rich. Such a cool verse. And sort of like supernatural and sort of like really mystical, right? Like the idea of entertaining angels. But how many know that this idea of like, and there's all sorts of movements that are like obsessed with angels, right? Like, there's gold. I'm not even coming at that today. I'll stay out of it. But what an idea, like, yo, hospitality is the pathway to angels. Like, this is where we see angels show up, is like me, like just being hospitable. Let's look at the definition of hospitality. Hospitality is the friendly reception and treatment of guests or strangers. It should say strangers right there. Or guests or strangers. Thank you, Alex Piloto, for just the word strange. I like that. This is where typos can become a big deal. But the word is guests or strangers. So the idea of hospitality, like just right off the bat, right, is the idea of turning strangers into friends. Right. Yeah. Turning outsiders into guests. Yeah. Like in so many ways, like just this little idea is like, I know it's not on the wall anywhere, but like this is VOUS Church. Yeah, great. Like if we can just go back to like the analogy for a minute of the meal, by the way, when Jesus says to Peter, you know, feed my sheep. Peter's like, he's not going to the grocery store. I'm like, okay, I have to literally like, you know, no. When he says feed my sheep, he means, what does he mean? Deliver the word. Yeah. It's like we come every week to eat. We come every week to eat from God's word. Like we are all feeding people. We're all setting the table week in and week out. And here's the beautiful thing about God's table. All are welcome at God's table. You and I, we just keep going down the metaphor. What are we doing? You and I, we're not the guest. We're the host. I mean, just get it into your heart. You're not the guest, you're the host. This is not a guest meeting, okay? This is like this is back in the kitchen. We're talking to the chef, and like we're getting ready, like people are coming in tonight. I don't know if you've ever been in the back of a kitchen before, but that place is intense, bro. People are getting ready to serve. People are getting ready to give an experience for people because guests are coming in. This is what I think church is like, bro. Like, we are in the back. We are hosts. And it's not just something that I do every once in a while for an event. No, servant leadership is my identity. Servant leadership is not an event, it's an identity. Like, I'm thinking like a host. Wherever I'm going, I think like a host, not a guest. I was just at a birthday party this week. Dawn Shree and I got invited to this birthday party, and I'll spare you all the details, but we were probably some of the only evangelical Christians at this party with 100 plus people, a whole lot of very successful people. And even though we went as a guest, how many know I was there on paper as the guest, but my mentality the entire time was I'm playing the host. So I'm not waiting for someone to strike up conversation with me. I'm at the dinner table making conversation. You can decide when you're at a place, when you're at a dinner table, I would tell you, there's already enough furniture there. Don't be furniture, bro. If you're going to be there, be different than the furniture. Actually contribute. Actually be proactive. I'm shocked how many of us will get at a dinner table and we got nothing to add. Bro, just start doing the principles that you know. Ask questions, encourage, add value. I'm a host even though I'm a guest at this party. Even though I'm the outsider, I'm behaving like I'm the insider. Why? Because I've learned how to be content whether or not I'm the outsider or the insider. I know who I am in Jesus. And so now I'm going there. I'm actually going there to serve. I don't have that as my role. No one's going to applaud me that week. I'm not going to get credit on base camp. No one knows it, but I'm practicing hospitality. I'm saying this because I think sometimes we get hospitality and entertainment mixed up. I think some of you are like, I'll be hospitable once I get my apartment. I'll be hospitable once we get an extra budget, then we can actually have people to the house. You got the wrong mentality. You think it's an event when it's actually an identity that you're called to carry. And so all of us, this idea of practicing hospitality, why this is important is because the idea of practicing hospitality means that like most of the time that you're like in your natural environment. Most of the time when we do think hospitality, the natural ways that we think about it is like inviting someone into your home. How many know that like when you're not called here, you don't have a home, you're just traveling. Oliver and Carrie, we just got back from honeymoon. They were staying in a hotel. They weren't at their home in the DR. They were on a vacation. Yeah. And so as they're on vacation, they're not necessarily thinking about, oh, wow, like we're at our home. We're thinking we're away. I think there's something really powerful about us as we're going, all right, I'm here. I'm putting both my feet down. I'm opening the place where I live as my home to invite guests in and to make them friends, to make them family. Hospitality is something that you tend to do, once again, when we're thinking about it from just the actual literal way of how we define it, it's something that you tend to do when you're at home. It's something that you tend to do when you're in your natural habitat. It's something you tend to do when you're in your own community. We don't really host when we're on vacation. We don't really host when we're traveling. We do that when we're at home. So when I start to practice hospitality, what it's doing, it's putting roots down. I'm not looking for community, I'm building community. This is a big deal because like, I think one of the things I'm trying to learn how to teach in our church, and I use the word church and community interchangeable over and over again, so just try to follow me. I just sense, and I'm gonna keep sharing these analogies over and over again. Part of what I do is just to repeat and reinforce, but like so many people come and they benefit from community, they get what they're looking for, but they stop giving back to it. So like, I can't tell you how many stories I know. Like VOUS Church is not my first community that I've leaned into and locked in. I've been doing this now for 14 years of my life full time. And I have watched so many people come in completely far from God, no purpose, no calling, no identity, come into a church setting, Discover their gifts, discover their purpose, find an identity, get a mission, meet a group of friends, get married, have kids, but somewhere along the way, they got their desires, but they lost their delight.
Wow.
There it is. It's good.
And so some of us, what happens is like, this is not about just getting community. The focus shifts. You're not a guest, you're a host. So a host is not focused on what they're getting, they're focused on what they're giving. But this is actually part of the secret that Paul has learned. This is what he's learned. He's like, actually, I've learned how to be content in all circumstances because I'm not just consumed with what I'm going to get, what I'm going to get, what I'm going to get. I actually have my focus on what I'm going to give, what I'm going to give, what I'm going to give. And it turns out you can't outgive God. Oh, I wish I could get some young leaders to get this at VOUS Church right now. A lot of what you see happening in my life or in Dawn Cherie's life, you're like, I want that, but you don't understand the pathway to get there. You can have all those things, but I'm telling you, it's 14 years of pouring our life out in the same direction, saying, I'm not a guest, I'm a host. It's not a good soundbite. It's not a good sermon. It's actually a call to action that I want you to get. You got to get a revelation about it. You're practicing hospitality. And this is what Jesus does over and over again. In fact, next week I want to talk to you that this isn't just like his mission. This is part of his method for evangelism. And I actually think hospitality, it's another time I can talk about it. I think hospitality might be our best practice for us to evangelize. Luke 19 is the story of Zacchaeus. I love this story. Jesus entered Jericho and was passing through, and a man was there by the name of Zacchaeus. He was a chief tax collector and was wealthy. He wanted to see who Jesus was, but being a short man, he could not. What's interesting, I didn't know this, but I just heard recently from my good friend John Mark Comer that in the Greek, I've never heard this before, in the Greek, it's still up for debate who the short man is. We don't know if it's Jesus or Zacchaeus in the way that the Greek was written. So just messing with all the Bible nerds out there. But maybe it's Jesus who's short. Anyways, the short man who could not because of the crowd. So he ran ahead and climbed. That's funny, right? Jesus is like mad short. We're like, what? This is not who I pictured. Jesus is a little people. Anyways, it's not, okay, move on. Oh, we'll stop. You're fine. We're hosting here. So he ran ahead and climbed a sycamore fig tree to see him. Since Jesus was coming that way, he had to get up in the tree because Jesus is so short he couldn't see him. So, sorry. People are like, you're messing up my flannel graph. Okay, so when Jesus reached the spot, he looked up and said to him, this is so Jesus, by the way. By name, he sees him, Zacchaeus, come down immediately. I must stay at your house today. And so he came down at once and welcomed him gladly. Now watch this, verse 7. I had not seen this before. I preached this passage so many times, but this just popped out. It says all the people. Someone say all the people.
All the people.
That's key because I actually haven't preached it as all the people. It says all the people saw this and began to mutter, he's gone to be the guest of a sinner. But Zacchaeus stood up and said to the Lord, look, Lord, here now I give half of my possessions to the poor, and if I've cheated anybody out of anything, I will pay back 4 times the amount. Jesus said to him, today salvation has come to this house, because this man too is a son of Abraham. For the Son of Man came to seek and to save that which was lost.
Wow.
So there's a whole lot in there and a lot of different sermons, but the thing that I want you to see, because here's Jesus and he's being hospitable. He's going to be the guest, but he's playing the role of the host of this guy named Zacchaeus. And this story, for so many reasons, is like scandalous. The first reason why it's scandalous is because Zacchaeus is a tax collector. And it's hard for you and I to like really resonate with that because we don't have tax collectors today. And so this is not like an IRS agent who's gone rogue. Okay, that's not what this is. This is an oppressor in society. This is a Jewish man who has started to work with the enemy, the Roman Empire. And he's aligned himself with the Roman Empire who's come in and taken over. And when the empire comes in, they come in awful. They're savages. Literally, they rape the women. They kill most of the men. They sacrifice their children. I mean, the stories of the Roman Empire, what they do, it's hard for us to truly resonate the weight of what we're talking about. And Zacchaeus is a guy who was Jewish who then goes, all right, you know what? I'm going to work for them. And the way I'm going to work for them is by stealing your money. And I'm not just going to take what they're asking. I'm going to get rich by asking for more of what you have. So I think what I want to just try to do, like a mental exercise, is just for a moment, and this is like risky because I would normally never ask you this question, but like all of us in our mind, whether we like it or not, even those of us that have like truly understand the grace of God, we all have this like moral hierarchy. Like there's somebody in our mind, whether it's a person or a type of a person that we think is like deplorable in society, like morally corrupt, like maybe like the mobster guy doesn't work for you, like nah, like my uncles, they're good guys too. Like you can empathize, like, but there's somebody in the world today that you do not empathize with.
Yeah.
Like there's somebody in the world today, at least that you could say, I struggle empathizing with ISIS right now. Like I'm just trying to think of like something extreme. Like what's happening in Afghanistan, I have a hard time getting up this Sunday morning, like, all right guys, let's love the terrorists. Like that's a radical call, okay? But I think for all of us, I just want us to see the scandal of what Jesus is doing, because I want to try to put some level of marching orders about what I'm talking about for us. That Jesus, like he in front of everybody is like, yo, I'm coming to he calls him by name. I'm coming to your house. He's putting value on him. He's making note of him. He's giving him purpose. He's like, I'm coming to your house. This is the tax collector. This is the person that in so many ways, like, Jesus shouldn't be associating himself with. What I love about Jesus is like he's never been afraid to be guilty by association. Like he's there for it. But the second thing that makes this whole moment so strange is like he's going to have, and the word is meals, like he's going to have a meal with this guy.
Yeah.
Now what you notice, I kind of mentioned a couple times, it says all the people. I used to always preach it was like the religious crowd. I don't know how I missed the word all. It's jumping right there. It's because everyone there thought Zacchaeus was bad. It was a collective like, whoa, like you're doing dinner with that guy? And this idea of meals, I think we'll get it, but once again, it's a hard thing to kind of understand in like that cultural context. Meals were boundary markers. Meals were like genuinely like who you've let in, and more so like who you're keeping out. And maybe it's not that hard because I think some of us can like actually just think about like modern day history. Like this is sort of like, go to like the civil rights movement. It's like, black people can't eat in this restaurant. It was a boundary marker. And even like in our day and age today, I think racism is still very, very real, but we can all collectively, I think, agree on the fact that there's a classism like situation right now that like most of us, like there's a restaurant like the wealthy people eat at, and there's a restaurant like the middle class eats at, and then there's like another restaurant like where like, the working class eats at. Like there's still boundary markers. Like, and if you're really being honest, like most of us in this room, who do we eat with? We tend to eat with people that look like us, think like us, friends, family. How often are we inviting the stranger? How often are we inviting the outsider? How often are we truly practicing hospitality? What would happen for you in the struggle that you find yourself in, that at times we become obsessed with there, with more, with bigger? What would happen if we could settle ourselves and start to practice this thing that Jesus practiced, which is I'm going to be the host. I'm going to add value to people. I'm going to open up my home. I'm going to open up my apartment. I'm going to open up my life to people that don't look like me, think like me, behave like me. And I'm going to share a meal, because what I actually wanted to do is I want to announce that this meal is not a way to keep people out, but instead it's a way to invite people in. What's crazy is Robert Chair says in Luke's gospel, Jesus was either going to a meal, at a meal, or coming from a meal. I think that's really cool. Like as you read the stories, like we all get obsessed with like the miracles, but what about like the bookends?
Very good.
What was he doing before? What was he doing after? The prep, the post. He was at a meal. The table was this place that he was practicing hospitality. The meal was this place where he was actually able to put value on someone. I still have this kind of crazy idealistic idea that like we could change the whole world if we could just get people to sit down and have a meal together. How many know even like the polarizing stuff, like it all is talked about so much better, you know, over a beautiful meal with people in a home. Like you find yourself even able to deal with things like politics, and I can actually hear you for the first time, and we're not hiding behind sound bites. We're actually getting to know the person and their beliefs and their philosophies. Paul writes to young Timothy, 1 Timothy, I want to read this for all of us, chapter 3. He says this is for everybody in the room. Just if you're ever wondering, like, all right, what is God looking for me as a leader? What is God looking for me as a follower? What is God looking for me as a disciple? He says, here's a trustworthy saying. If anyone sets his heart on being an overseer, that's a leader, that's someone who's overseeing people, he and she desires a noble task. Now, the overseer must be above reproach. We'll talk about that in 2 weeks. The husband of but one wife, temperate, self-controlled, respectable, here's the word, hospitable. Hospitable, able to teach, not given to drunkenness, not violent but gentle, not quarrelsome, not a lover of money. He must manage his own family well and see that his children obey him with proper respect. Parentheses, if anyone, this is bars right here. If anyone does not know how to manage his own family, how can he take care of God's church? That's Paul to Timothy. Like, yo, you can't manage your personal life. Why on earth do you think that you can manage God's people? This is why I think it's important, anyone who's on staff, that you're a tither. Rich, that's kind of personal. Really? You can't steward your money? But you expect me to trust you to steward God's greatest resource, God's great... People are God's heart. You can't manage you can't put God first in your money, but somehow I'm going to trust you to take care of God's people? I don't think so. I don't think so. If you can't manage your home, you can't manage God's house. He must not be a recent convert, or he may become conceited and fall under the same judgment as the devil. He must also have a good reputation, watch this, with outsiders. With outsiders. Like it actually matters what the outside world is saying about us, that we actually have a strategy here. You know, I love Christian people that are immature. Man, God judges the heart. You're right. You're right. Newsflash, we're not trying to reach God. Man looks at the outward appearance. It actually matters if you're going to be hospitable, what the environment is that you set in. It actually matters that you got music at the right level. It actually matters that the candles are lit right. It actually matters that you did your hair. It actually matters that you wore a nice outfit. It's not because we're shallow. It's because we're trying to reach people. You come up on the platform, bro, you ought to look presentable. You grab a microphone, you ought to use good vocabulary. You ought to actually make sense. You actually ought to be prepared. Not because we're shallow, not because we're trying to just like micromanage everything, because we're trying to be hospitable. We want to be good hosts. What do we... Get over your self-righteous, like stop. Don't be super spiro. We're trying to reach a secular, broken world. Okay, like you in here is cool, bro. Like I get it, bro. This is family. This is back in the kitchen. But come Sunday, homie, it matters how you present yourself. It matters what other people in the city are saying about your pastor. You want someone who's got a good reputation. You want someone that you can say, I can follow that person. That what the world is saying about him, it actually matters. I'm just telling you. He must also have a good reputation with outsiders so that he will not fall into disgrace and into the devil's trap. So much there, so loaded, but so good. I guess the big point I want to say is I have watched my entire life being in the ministry and grow up in a pastor's home. I have watched pastors be fired for inappropriate sexual relations. I have watched pastors be fired for misuse of funds. I have watched pastors be let go because they were bullies. I've watched people be let go because of narcissism. In all of my 37 years in the church, I have yet to see somebody get fired from a church staff because they stopped practicing hospitality.
Wow.
But it's right there in the list of all the do's and don'ts, but we don't put much value on it.
It's really good.
Like even when today you're like, I'm looking for something deep, bro, and you're talking about practicing hospitality, that's the vision for here? Yeah, like if you would catch this, like, I need you to be a host. I need you to open your life. I need you to put value on people. I need you to have a meal with someone. So we can kind of get like lost. And I'm going to give us 2 reminders that if you're on staff and on team, you've heard before, but it's good because we're just repeating some of this stuff. What do I do from like here? Number 1, think big, act small. Think big, act small. Like I love VOUS Church. Yes, we want to change the world, but we're going to start here. Everybody wants to change the world. Nobody wants to start here. Everyone's like, yo, I got a world changing it. Start here. Start here. So what do I mean by here? Dude, I just heard Alex come up. I heard Manu come up. I'm trying to think, Oliver was up here. There are already these things that are in motion that are opportunities for you to be hospitable. Like it's crew week. It's really silly for you to walk in and be like, that's it. Every Friday night, Shabbat dinner at my house. But you don't even friggin' have anybody coming to your crew. Like, think big. Like, get a revelation, but act small. Do the thing right now that's already been created for you. So when I say practice hospitality, maybe it's some new language. It is the same things that we've got. It's you getting a fresh vision about that thing. It's you going, oh, this does matter. This is not just something that I have to. This is something that I get to do. What this is doing is grounding me and putting roots here, and I am a builder of community. I'm actually fulfilling the mandate that Paul gave to a young leader named Timothy, that I'm practicing hospitality through my crew. It's not Manu's job to build your crew. It's your job to build your crew. Manu's job is to help facilitate it, make sure that we're headed in the right direction, that people are walking in health and peace, and that we've got good activities planned for leadership development. But it is up to you for the rest of your life to say, I'm going to build this thing. I'm going to build this thing. Like, I'm going to think big, but I'm going to act small. Think big, act small.
Very good.
I think the next little handle for this is just, you've heard this before. If you can't measure it, you can't manage it.
Yeah, that's good.
So we gotta find a way to measure these qualitative things.
Right.
Wait, am I practicing hospitality? Well, yeah, I mean, like last month, I went to dinner with some guys, on the creative team, and like, yeah, bro, like that's my heart. Cool, great. How many of us all know, like, we all have a good heart, I think at this point in this room, I'm hoping. We all have an intention.
Yeah.
But winners and losers have the same goal.
Yeah.
What sets them apart is a system.
That's it.
What sets them apart is an ability to measure it. Why do we ask you to count everything? Oh, they're making me, I forgot to get the count. I didn't know they wanted me to count that. It's not because we're obsessed with going, like, look how great we are, all these numbers. It's so that I can ensure that you are a good manager. Like, you will never multiply your finances if you don't take a moment to look at your finances to figure out, where's my money going, You ever meet people that's like, oh man, it's just, I can't keep cash because cash just burns a hole in my pocket. That's because you don't have a vision for your money. The only reason why it burns a hole in your pocket is because you never have set a vision or an intention for where your dollars are supposed to go. We are entrusted with God's people. Everything that we do with God's people around here ought to be counted, ought to actually get put on a sheet, ought to be reflected upon and looked at, because we're trying to measure something so that we can manage it. What do we need to do next? What's a good strategy? Where are we weak? Where are we strong? What's missing? For me in my life, crew, once again, is the system. That's the bare minimum. Don Shree and I, we try to not only just do our crew, but we want to open our house. Our goal is once a week, our house is opened up for meals, for conversation with people. Crew is one, and then we host a dinner at our house once a week, some way, somehow. And in that, it's not a big program, it's about putting value. Go back to Jesus' story. We don't even hear Jesus' sermon. It's not about his content, it's about his presence. And his presence is in you. And so when you just awaken to the fact that Christ in you is the hope of glory, when somebody is in your environment, in your setting, you call them by name, you put value on them. You don't have to have a big sermon. You just have to have a moment to look in someone's eye. What does Zacchaeus do? Zacchaeus stands up. And we always use that language, the reasonable response. His reasonable response is, I'm giving half away. There's no debate about tithing. There's no debate about when's the offering. It's 50% of what I got, I'm giving to the poor. And he says, then I'm going to go back to all the people I've cheated, and I'm going to pay them back, not like interest, 4 times the amount. Wow. The right language is absurd generosity. Because that's always the reasonable response to when you really have a revelation about grace. It's absurd generosity. So if your life is not marked with dollars yet, it's going to be generous in other areas. That's why some of you have moved to Miami and you're like, I want to be in a leadership program because I want to be around where God is moving right now. And my reasonable response at this season of my life is to throw my entire life, all of my time, 4 days a week, because I want to be absurdly generous with what God is doing. But it's not just because of a sermon, it's because you've encountered his presence. So for us, for DC and I, it's on a bare minimum, I need to be doing meals 4 times a month. Crew, And then I'm doing some other kind of thing where I'm hosting people in my home. Not because I'm an extrovert. Not because I'm a 7 on the Enneagram. Not because I'm a woo. Not because my job is pastor of VOUS Church. But because I have a firm conviction that I find contentment and I find peace in being right here, right now, when I practice hospitality. And who knows? Maybe, just maybe, there's been some angels in my house.
Very good.
Wow.
Who knows what supernatural thing I've come around. Think big, but act small. We're going to change the world. But we got to first start with South Miami. And then we got to build a 4th service in the city. And we got to hire somebody in the production space. And then I guess kids really needs a staff person right now. It's acting small. Like it's not small, it's acting small. It's thinking big. And we're going to measure it. We're going to measure it so that we can manage it. I'm going to put language around these things that I'm a host. I'm called to this. I hope I get to Goat Island, but I'm going to trust that the one who's driving this boat, he'll get me there. He's been there before. It's called a vision for here. Amen? Amen. Thank God.